Hey everyone, this is Quakeman. I'm sorry if my voice is very low right now. It is very early in the morning, and as of this recording, I kind of haven't sleep. Blame that. And plus, my parents are waking up or still sleeping, so I don't want to wake them up even if they're still sleeping. So, bear with me if I'm really quiet. So, this is going to be a video response to a video that I call a friend, but I'm really not sure if I can. He's someone I've known for a very long time. I can't really say I've talked to him personally enough to really say he's a friend. It's hard to explain. He goes by the name of Carnival. He was someone I've known for a very long time because he was kind of the person I found out, and that's how I found out about Skull Tag. Which, if I remember, I know he's going to correct me if I say this, I think he was kind of one of the project leaders for Skull Tag, which is like a take on Doom and make it a little bit better in my opinion. He worked on a bunch of side projects for Toon, these very interesting Doom projects, which I forget their name, which makes me feel bad because I loved playing them. Well, pretty much fast forward about 7 years later, he's working on his own game called Rack, which I'm hoping that once I have a job to pay for his little pay for it beta system thing, I could try to get a video up to show you guys, because I would actually want to show you guys off with Rack because I'm very interested on this stuff like that. But this video is actually not about Rack. I wish it was, but I don't have it yet. This is actually about a video that that Carnival actually posted, I think yesterday or today or something. My mind is so messed up of what today is. Where the topic was about whatever happened to the Doom-style first-person shooters, and this is the sort of topic that I've been involved with some friends of mine. Sadly, it was never recorded, nor was it on a podcast or anything like that, and it was something I never really wanted to talk about because I didn't want to make this video of like, oh, back in my day I had to play this stuff, because I grew up playing Doom and Quake and Blood and Rise of the Triad, Wolfenstein 3D, you know. I grew up with all these different games in mind, you know, and, you know, seeing this weird shift in shooters, which I've gradually accepted but didn't like it per se, in a certain factor about the subject, you know. A Halo Combat Evolved came out, and that kind of shifted things, as well as stuff like 007 GoldenEye and Perfect Dark on the N64 kind of did some things. The original Medal of Honor on the PlayStation 1 kind of did a few things with the shooter element too. And over time, it just gradually, as a snowball, started to roll its cage down the road. I mean, I gotta say, what makes me kind of happy is with Halo, it wasn't until around 2006 that games gradually started to go the way Halo did it. But I was very happy between 2001 and 2006. We still had a lot of beautiful games that didn't take a lot that Halo tried to do. In some retrospect, I'll say. There's not a lot of games I can really say that does it a whole lot. But, I mean, Doom 3 came out in 2003, whatever. I'm actually absolutely off topic as doing that. So, trying to be on top about the whole situation is that he made a few points that I don't consider that he's wrong, but I do want to point out some context about the situation, because I understand what Carnival's trying to say, but the way he says it, I don't know. To me, gaming always changes. It's always different. If you keep the same thing, most people are not going to pick it up because they're going to say, oh, that looks exactly the same or plays the exact same way as that game, so why should I get this game if that game is like this and I already have it? That was kind of the whole situation with a lot of games at the time. But they always added a feature or something that was making it so different from the others. When it came to Duke Nukem, for me, it was mostly the shrink ray. It was a lot harder to deal with. The fact that it used fake polygon textures, in a sense, and actually uses on the top floor graphical engine. It has slopes and has a lot more better features. It has color design, a lot of stuff that Doom did not have. It had voices in the game. It had these weird, awkward FMB styles every time you finish the boss fights, as well as the one that starts during the birth, and the list goes on. And then when you get into Blood, Blood is a lot more things that's even better, where all the items are 3D, and there's actual FMVs, I think they're called, before each story, with really good voice acting and good, at the time, good animation for it. But it's still basically, a level design of mindless shooting with no regen health or anything. Doom was an upgrade to Wolfenstein, because Wolfenstein only used a 64 by 64 grid of a texture palette for every block and character, as well for the map design. It was all blocks. It had no ceiling. It had no floors. It was just a maze game. Doom took that and changed it by making actual levels, stairs, dark rooms, flashing lights, teleportation, much more complex maps by actually making different shapes and designs. It was a nice upgrade. And then when you take that for Duke and then take that for Blood, that's how it works. They have to change it up to somehow keep people interested, because if it was still the same, no one's going to really touch it. And that's kind of why I think a lot of people kind of shifted. And again, I'm sorry if that was not on topic again. But that's the way I look at it. Well, one of the points he talks about is, he says that in Doom you can carry all your weapons, in Halo you cannot. Well, I hate to use this term, but this is kind of how today's standards has become. Games want to make it more realistic. I hate to use that term because I don't like it. I don't like it when it comes to video games, but I understand the context clues of it. I'm fine with certain games that have the 2 weapon limit systems. I'm okay with that. I grew up the living crap of finishing Rainbow Six on the hardest difficulty, finishing Splinter Cell on the hardest difficulty, finishing all the Ghost Recons on the hardest difficulty, including the expansions, and you have only 2 weapons. Well, in Splinter Cell you have like 3 or 4 plus gadgets, but you know what I mean. You are limited to 2 weapons that you start at the match. Now, yes, you do not actually pick up other weapons, unlike what Halo does. So you have to, in those games you have to drop it. But that was kind of my first slide into the idea of only having limited weapons. I didn't play Halo until 2003. I was a little late to the no. Actually, I didn't play until 2004, maybe actually. So I was kind of a little late to the party with Halo's Combat Evolved system. When I played Halo, I really loved its design. I really loved what they did to the game and how it felt. But I still love to play Doom. I still love playing that and Quake and everything. Nothing ever changes from that fact. But I will have to say I did not like how, because Halo got so popular, it completely drove a lot of sales with Xbox selling and the consoles and everything. I didn't like the fact that a lot of games took too much from Halo. I can understand taking cues from it. That's fine. It is okay to take cues from other games to kind of give yourself a general idea and make things a little bit better. That's fine. You can do that. But my issue was taking a game franchise or series that I love so much and adding features that, to me, really does not make no sense, and doesn't really kill the game, but has a bad taste in my mouth. Some of these examples is Ghost Recon Future Soldier, Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter, Rainbow Six Vegas 1 and 2, and as much as I love this game and I'm excited for Blacklist, Conviction, and Blacklist, the Splinter Cell series, like, adding regen health kind of ruins the idea of what made Rainbow Six to me so important. It was that you had a mission, you had to deal with it, and you only could save your game 3 times during the mission, and you had to use those super wisely. And to the point where if you get damage, that's it. You're stuck with that. And sometimes the damage could be more severe than normal. Now the damage does not inhibit your experience, mind you, but depending on how damaged you are depends on how lucky enough that one shot, if you just turn the corner, will knock you dead. Another big factor is trial and error, but I won't get into that. I'm going on too long with that. Sorry for that tangent. He talks about how Doom has placed items in secrets, Health has health regen, and pre-placed environments and linear stuff. To me, I have to say it like this, and I hate to say this so clear because like someone like me kind of destroys the mindset and hurts and everything. But you gotta look at it like this. To a lot of people, not anyone gave a crap about Wolfenstein story, or Doom stories, or Quake story, or Blood story, or Duke 3D story, because no one really paid attention. It was like, here's a level, here's there, go to point A to point B, done. It wasn't until, in my opinion, GoldenEye, that had the whole option where you had to like, oh, you have objectives to do before you even could go to the exit. And that's kind of what got into Halo, where you had objectives to do, but it was a little bit more linear. It wasn't like a lot of other things. In my opinion, I think Crysis does a better job with this, and I know that was in 2007, but I think Crysis does a much better job with its two-weapon system, its objective system, and all that other stuff, but I won't go into that. But Doom in reality is more of just a action-paced shoot-'em-up game. That's all it is. And games like Halo or what else can I list here? Condemned, Assassin's Creed, Alone in the Dark, and I know a lot of these are not first-person shooters, but they're trying to convey a story while giving these very interesting gameplay mechanics at the same time. Doom didn't really have a good story if you look at it on the outside. Obviously for me, I know the story inside and out based on reading the manuals, the guidebooks, the intro structures from the developers, as well as the key moments, even though they call this a reboot, the key moments that explain the events that happened on Phobos and Deimos that were in Doom 3. I'll leave it at that. But in reality, no one really cares. No one really cares about the story. I mean, even in Quake 2, which by far to me is one of my favorite Quake games, period. I mean, I love Quake 1 for what it is, but Quake 2 is my favorite game of all time. And the reason why is because of the story. The story is so awesome. The problem is because of so many people are so used to it being an action shoot 'em up, even though there is an objective system within the game, and there is a portal where you go between levels before you go through the next chapter, and there's secret levels involved with it, which doesn't help the story, but it kind of feels like you're doing an impact to it because some of the missions have you destroying supply dumps. It's pretty cool, in my opinion. But Quake 2 had a great story, in my opinion, but it's kind of lost because at the time, people were so grown up to the action-paced games. So when people play Quake 2, they don't notice the story. So when they fought against the Matarok, I haven't played in a long time that I'm forgetting his name. It starts with M, it's the Matarok or something like that. He's the final boss in Quake 2, and kind of the leader of the Strogs. When you got to him, you just thought, oh, he's just some big bad guy you gotta kill. And that's kind of the same effect when you played Doom 1. When you were finishing the second episode, you fought against the Cyber Demon, and that was kind of a big challenge. Then when you played Doom 2, they're kind of just there. I mean, they're still a challenge, but they don't consider it's like it's a different feel because it's not really a boss fight anymore because they're just there, you know. I'm going on way too long, and this probably is going to be a very, very long recording, and that's fine with me, in all opinion. And then he also talks about Doom movement for defense, while Halo has cover and hiding. Well, I don't know how to really say this. I liked being able to move around and enjoy myself, but at the same time, I kind of do like the aspect of not necessarily cover shooting like Gears of War, which I secretly hate, but I don't mind it in some degree. It's only when you play on the hardest difficulty that I find that Halo doesn't have a challenge, it's more of a nuisance, while playing Doom on the hardest difficulty, that is a challenge, because that really makes you think what is a good strategy against these enemies. The SSG is a much better option to use against Hell Knights and Barons of Hell, because it takes 3 to 6 direct shots to kill them than wasting rocket launcher ammo, unless you want to use the rocket launcher, which takes 3 to 6 shots. It takes a lot more strategic value because the shotgunners do much more killer damage than you would think they would do, and so does the Cacodemons and the Mancubus. So there's a lot of development you have to do involved with it, and I like that. But at the same time, I do like Halo. I'm not going to lie about that. I actually do like how Halo does a few of the aspects, as well as some other games out there. Army of Two has a beautiful story and interesting cover system as it too. What else do we got? I know I'm going to be pausing for a bit. I'm looking at my games I got. Another game that has a cover system and regen health that I played the crap out of it to the point where I have every achievement and I'm replaying it again on the Xbox. Deus Ex Human Revolution. This game has regen health, you die very quickly, and it uses cover systems. Big time. This is a good example of it being done correctly, unlike Gears of War, where it doesn't do it correctly in my opinion. It's just... yeah, I don't want to go into it, because I know I'll have fanboys get on my case about it. The thing is that there's always a right place for the right time with its settings. Some games may do greatly well with the fast-paced action of like the Doom styles. Hard Reset does a good example with that, and even though this is an old game, Painkiller was another good example. Again, has a story that only people who cared about the game will know about it, but most people will just be like, oh, it's just a shoot-'em-up game with crazy weapons. And that's kind of how it feels. I mean, for me, that's how it kind of felt until I started looking into the story a bit more. And I actually think Painkiller was pretty cool too on the story too, but most people are not going to look at it. But it's about setting. It's about what is it trying to accomplish. You know, like with Rack, for example, based on what I'm looking at with that, Rack is trying to be taking it seriously, but at the same time, it's not a realistic game at all. I mean, looking at it, it's not realistic in any way, shape, or form. And the way the story and the character development of your main character, which I kind of forgot his name, it makes sense for the setting you're using for the fast pace of the Doom FPSs. But Halo, for example, it kind of makes sense for Halo using that sort of options. And a lot of other games do actually a pretty good job with using its options it does. Stranglehold, even though that kind of is a takeoff of Max Payne, does a good job with its mechanics. Doesn't really have much gen health last time I checked, but it was still pretty cool. Red Faction Guerrilla isn't beautiful on its regen health system, even though I don't like regen health after how much I loved playing Red Faction, the first one. But Guerrilla does a fantastic job and adds a new mechanic of the destructibility for it, which is so much better than Battlefield, mind you. Dead Space doesn't have regen health, but that has a good aesthetic to it. I'll actually use this as a good example. As much as I kind of didn't want to get into it, I'll say it. Crysis, okay? You are in a power armor, okay? You are in a power armor which has ability for cloaking, for armor, for protection, but not permanently. You can move super fast, and you have super strength. It has a built-in medical system that regens your health. To me, that is great. I like things like that. But when you look at Gears of War, or Rainbow Six Vegas 2, or freaking Call of Duty, it's kind of confusing. Now, Call of Duty I can kind of understand. As much as I loved playing Call of Duty when it came out in 2004, I'll have to say that the game is a bit weird with how its health system works. It doesn't give you enough good health. Enemies' drop rate with it when you're playing on either Hardened or Veteran is super rare, and I'm not trying to say that as if the game is bad that way, but the balancing between its difficulty and the health system, it kind of makes sense that they added the regen health system. But when you get into Call of Duty 4, its AI is super the worst thing to ever do, and is the most painful inducing to try and finish it on Veteran, even with regen health. But it, like I was trying to say before, it depends on its playstyle, it depends on what it tries to be. And I'm okay with it when it happens to a certain degree. I don't condone regen health. I only condone it when it doesn't seem right. When I played Wolfenstein 2009, I was excited for this game. I knew what they were going to do with it. I knew what was happening with it. I know it wasn't going to be as great as a sequel to Return of the Castle Wolfenstein, but I was excited for this game. It wasn't until I got to the regen health part that actually just kind of ruined the entire experience. Now they kept the multiple gun system. You can carry up to 8 weapons, which can be upgradable with the money you find in the game and completing missions. Bunch of side missions, bunch of secrets. Everything about this game is absolutely perfect. It has almost everything it needs to be close to that Doom FPS that you are talking about, Carnival. The problem I find with it that breaks it the most is the map designs are not actually that good in some cases. The main level hubs are good. It's some of the level designs. Boss fights don't warrant too much, even though the payoffs are pretty cool with the abilities you can get. But by the time you get all 4 of the abilities with the regen health and you have your weapons upgraded, the thing is completely off balance, and I completely lost it. Its formula breaks down. And if you've played Wolfenstein 2009 and grew up with the old games, you can kind of understand what I'm saying. I'm sorry if I make no sense with it. But what I'm trying to say is they had the good structure with it. They had the exploration. They had places you can go to. They had achievements, if you want to go on Xbox achievements, which I do. But there's achievements for finding all the gold and secrets in the game. And the story, as much as it's kind of stupid, it is pretty developed over time. But the regen health, the way you upgrade your weapons, and the power-ups you get, which includes going into Veil mode, which makes you faster and easier to kill enemies in this somehow, an ability to slow down time, a la Fear, an ability to have a bubble shield, kind of like Halo, but it's portable on you, and an ability to have a overcharge, which basically upgrades your damage on your weapon. That all that together completely just breaks what I was expecting for this game, and that to me is a bad example of using options from modern times, in my opinion. But in some cases, I actually don't mind it. I mean, again, I grew up playing games like Rainbow Six and Ghost Recon, where at the time that was considered the most modern stuff there was. Then Call of Duty came out, and then as much as I love the games, Battlefield came out, and that kind of just steamrolled it to crap. And then look at freaking games like Ghost Recon Future Soldier, and then Vegas 2. And again, as much as I'm excited for this game, I am not proud with some of the design choices what they did with Conviction. Now they're fixing it in Blacklist, which makes me kind of happy, but they're still keeping the regen health, which I can kind of understand in some retrospect for how the game is designed, but I still think they should not have allow it. However, I'm so happy that Ubisoft has finally taken the risk, and I hope they don't screw this up. But Rainbow Six Patriot, for freak's sake, they're actually doing this correctly by, from my knowledge, if I'm reading this correctly, by not adding regen health, but adding a morality system to make you play the game more and more, which I think is great. I love morality systems that kind of change the way the overall story is. I think that's awesome and a good idea to it. And as I stop with that point, I feel like I'm not even talking about things correctly. This is going to be a very long video, I know that for sure. Other points he talks about using your brain to solve puzzles in the map instead of having to be linear and laid out. He also talks about how there's no reason to add these extra levels if there's nothing to them besides extra enemies and everything. It's a distraction to the overall goal. I don't know where to start with this one, because for me, I understand the point he's trying to make, but for me, I have to say that it makes sense. It's better to have the design of this world. It's better to have the understanding as if you are in this giant military base than, oh, look, you're just going through quarters. There's all these locked doors that could be like interesting stuff and information about this rebel base you're going to, but nope, we're just going to keep you on a normal path. And I don't like that. I actually like it when I force myself to go in these rooms. Even if there's nothing to discover, it still gives me an understanding of what I'm looking at when it has good art and design, of course. Some games use copy-paste rooms. I'll say one thing. If you have not watched my Chaser playthrough, most people who haven't, and I'm sorry if I'm kind of advertising this right here, if you watch my Chaser playthrough, you'll notice that there's a lot of rooms in there that have no distinction, no reason to be there, no items to be there, nothing. But you want to know something? The entire time I'm playing Chaser, it makes me have a much better idea of where I'm at. It seems like there's actual life to the freaking game. Because, to me, if you're walking through a base, every door is not going to be just seamlessly locked. That's my problem. And to me, I see no problem with it. I see that adding detail to things makes the map give life, and it gives much more understanding. I understand what you're trying to say when you say that if it adds nothing, it's a distraction to the goal. But the problem is we've been so used to linear games, kind of like Call of Duty and Battlefield and Halo, that we are so used to that when we see these added extra levels, we think it's pointless. I don't think so. To me, it flourishes much more better life, it has much more interesting stuff. It actually feels like a very connected building, and I just feel like that it makes sense to me. It just depends on the design of it. Because if there's no art or life put into it, then yeah, it's pointless. But saying that you have to use your brain to solve puzzles, there really was no puzzles in Doom. There wasn't like, oh, you got to turn this crank and then do this. No. I don't know what was the first game that really had puzzles to do that in a first-person shooter. But for me, I guess Deus Ex works. But for me, I can't really say using your brain to solve puzzles, but to understand map on where you need to go, because sometimes you have to backtrack and do a lot of confusion and everything. One map example I can really give is, I think, E2M7 or Doom 2's map 8, Tricks and Traps. I think those are the only two maps that you really have to use your brain to really think about what you're trying to do. Because Trick and Traps, you can actually finish that really quickly without having to go through all the rooms. Because there's only 2 rooms you gotta go to get the keys. Well, actually, no, just 1 room. It's the Cyber Demon room to get the yellow key. And then you get the red key just easily. And if you're playing on easy difficulty, there's a God Sphere that makes it easier. And if you're playing in Skull Tag, you can just rocket jump out. That's just me. But the stuff like that I can understand having where you have to backtrack and use key with this door. Oh, like, I can't open this, so I have to go find this key. That I can understand, but I wouldn't really call those puzzles. I mean, you can describe them as puzzles. I don't really call them that. The puzzles I call, though, is the switches in Duke Nukem, where it could either be 2 or 3, like, probably the most easiest one. The very first switch you have to do in Duke 3D, it's in the red light district. It's switch number 3 to open that door to go get the blue key, But over time, it gets a little bit more complex, where you have 6 switches, and you need to figure out what the combination is. That to me is a puzzle. And that makes sense. Although there really is no thought process to it, because it's like, oh, just keep hitting switches until you have a solution. So I feel like I was off tangent with that one too. I'll move on. He was saying having these artificial limbs of like having 2 weapons or something like that isn't a good way for the game. It hinders you and it doesn't feel right. Again, I see no problem with this if it's done correctly. Now, I have yet to play this game, so I don't want to use this as an example. And I know for a fact a friend of mine is probably going to get mad at me because I've talked about this with the forum, okay? BioShock. Great game. Love this game. I think it's a fantastic game. Sets a lot of moods correctly. It has details in the map design that's so great. If you want to learn more backgrounds of the BioShock and Rapture of what happened before your character even arrived, you have to look for any of the audio logs and audio diaries and stuff. There's great progression. There's great story. The little secret halfway at the halfway point of the game, which I'm not going to give it away, even though the game is like freaking 6 years old. I don't care. I'm not going to give it away. It's a great game. BioShock Infinite came out about a month ago, and the only problem I have with it is 2 things. Now, this is just from me seeing the game, and I haven't played it yet, so I don't know if I'll change my opinion or not. there are two things in the game that I think break BioShock. But I'm not saying break it as if the game sucks this way. They added a 2-weapon limit, and they added a weird shield system. Two things that I never thought BioShock would include. I mean, in the first BioShock, you had medkits that you could use on the fly. It's now most people could argue it could be count as a regen health, but it's like you have to press it. I don't know. Fear did the same way, so I don't really call that regen health. Although Fear did something different. I won't talk about that. But BioShock had a 2-weapon weapon limit system and the shield system. Now, yes, your health doesn't regenerate, and I think you still have to use medkits to regenerate your health, or find them in suitcases and everything, just like the first BioShock. But the whole addition of the shield, I thought was awkward, and the 2-weapon system, I think, really hinders the game way too much. And that's just my opinion, because the game does not really prepare you for anything. That's just what I've noticed. Again, I haven't played it yet, but the game seems like it doesn't prepare you for what my friend, what I don't know what they're going to be called, but challenges. I'll just call them challenges. Where you have a guy who's in a big suit and it takes a lot of things to kill. It's like, oh, I got to fight against this big guy. I'm almost out of salts to use my vigors, and all I got is a pistol and a machine gun. Yeah, good luck. And the fact that it doesn't prepare you, or the map design does not give you, not necessarily a cheap way of winning, but at least not giving you a context clue of it happening, is kind of what bugs me about how BioShock Infinite turned out. I'm not trying to say it breaks it 100% to where it sucks. I haven't played it yet, but I will too soon. But to me, that's an example of it, in my opinion, of hindrance. Because it's confusing. Like, why take something of BioShock where it was this crazy, sort of what people call scary game, of having these weapons and the plasmids and the creativity of these plasmids and the world of Rapture of this underwater city. And then take something like Columbia, of this great, really great world, and doing a lot more to BioShock than I ever seen. And even though I haven't even played the game or seen the story, I don't know much yet. This 2-weapon system and the shield system is kind of a weird step back, in my opinion. I know they have an explanation for the shield in the game, but I still think it's a stupid reason. But maybe it'll be a good reason for BioShock Infinite, maybe not. I don't know. I still need to play it. But in my opinion, that's an example for it. But sometimes the idea of having multiple weapons is also not really a good idea at the same time, in my opinion. I don't know. I can't think of the game right now, but there was a current game that came out at one point that had a boatload of weapons that you could all carry at once, but I didn't care about majority of them, and I can't really think about it at this particular time. I'll try to remember it later, but it was just like, they gave you all these weapons and they try to introduce. Oh, I know what it is. Bulletstorm. That's it. Bulletstorm introduced you to all these crazy weapons with all these crazy abilities, but here's the weird part. I only use the carbine. I don't care about the disc thrower or this mine shooter thing, whatever it was. They were useful, but the carbine special ability obliterates them and goes through multiple bodies when you upgrade it. So what's the point of these other weapons? Which is the thing I want to say about dominant strategy. Don't give something that's easy to use and then add other things later where no one's going to really use it. I'll give another example. Is Duke Nukem has a lot of crazy weapons, but in reality, I only use 3. I only use the shotgun, the Ripper, and the rocket launcher. Don't really use the Devastator. Don't really use the freeze ray. Barely use the trip bombs. And the shrink ray is only for emergency purposes. That's it. But I only use those 3 core mechanics. And that's the same thing with Doom, is I only use the BFG or the plasma or the rocket launcher when I'm in a situation where I'm either low health, bad situation, and I can't really rely on bullets because that won't stop them from attacking too much. But when you look at I actually think I lost my mind there saying that. I'm sorry about that. Fuck. But it's a blur line. Sometimes it does it great with the game, sometimes it doesn't. But it's also that we have different opinions. Some people like the two weapon system, some people don't. For me, I don't like it with certain games that uses it. You know, again, Rainbow Six and Ghost Recon, perfect example that I have no problem with it. Because it makes you think on your feet, because you start with those weapons. You start with the weapons you choose at the start of the mission, and you're stuck with those for the 40-minute to an hour gameplay, depending on the difficulty you're dealing with. Probably take you 4 hours to finish each mission, depending on how. But yeah. But I don't call it a hindrance or a bad way of gaming or anything like that. I think of it as a good option depending on where it's put into. I don't mind it. I don't think it's terrible. It just depends on how it's done. I'll just say it like that. And then the last thing you talked about was man versus army, able to feel like a badass by taking on 10 enemies or more, unlike in Halo games where you kind of just like kill one enemy and hide and wait for your shields and everything. Again, it depends on the placement. To me, I would, in my mindset, I would find it so weird if I was playing a Call of Duty game and I was able to just like blow up a tank or kill these guys and I'm not even like lost 2% of my health. You know what I mean? It feels weird. And I'm not saying those games because they're modern military shooters. It's just some games it feels like you don't want that. I will bring in an obscure game that I don't think a lot of people have played of. 13. Very cel-shaded game based on, I think, a comic book. Great game. But this game, even though it does not have a regenerate health system, it does not use modern things like ADSing or anything, and it is kind of fast-paced if you think about it. The game does really teaches you not to fight against multiple enemies head-on. Take them one at a time. And I like that. I like that because it gives you pacing. It gives you really good pacing. And again, it's a balance you got to look at. You want to have good pacing and story development at the same time. You don't want people blasting through the game and just shooting everything and going to the next area, and then there's a talking segment that they just ignore because like I want to shoot more people. I want to go. You have to be careful with that. Now, I can understand for what you're doing with rank, there's probably not going to be many voice during missions. I don't know if you're going to have cutscenes or title cards or whatever during each level or boss fight. I don't know what you're doing with rack, but with rack, the way you're doing with rack makes sense for why why you're doing it that way. It's different with other ways, And I'm sorry, this is going on so long, and I think that's fine. I think that's fine for me. I mean, I may make no sense. I may sound weird with how I explain things, but if you can understand it like I'm trying to, that will be great. But back to the point I was trying to say before I said that. It depends on what you're trying to do with the game and what you're trying to engross in the player to be immersed in this world. If you are setting up to be this agent or modern shooter or a setting that sounds like it could be in real life, sometimes you're just going to have to take the risk of going the way that most people do. A 2-weapon system, sometimes regen health system. It all depends on how things work out. That's just how it works. And sometimes it can break a game. Sometimes it actually does a good job with a game. Like I said, Halo does a good job with it, in my opinion. But a game like Gears of War does not. In any shape or form, it does not help the game. Because all I see the game is nothing but gray and brown. Not only that, I see a post-apocalyptic world and me on a cover 24/7 of the day. See, I understand that they want you to not always go out in a firefight because you'll die easily. What I don't like is when you die so easily for something so simple. Not only that, enemies are super hard to kill, but you're easy to die. That is a problem. That is where I think regen health is terrible. Now, something like Call of Duty, again, or Battlefield, enemies die in about 2 to 3 bullets, kind of like realistically. But if a game was trying to establish that it's not a realistic game, but still does the 2-weapon system limit, that's fine. I'll give another example, another obscure game that probably no one has ever played. Area 51, the original Area 51 for the Xbox or PC, or the sequel that I don't really call the sequel, Area 51, or Blacklight Area 51. Both these games use kind of this modern military shooter type style, not really with the first Area 51, but you want to know something? It doesn't really have regen health. I don't think Blacklight Area 51 had regen health per se. I think it did, though. But it was done in a different way. It has modern shooter, it has ADSing, but it takes more bullets to kill people than normal, but you don't die easily in Blacklight Area 51. That, to me, is a good idea. It's just about pacing and balancing. That's all it is. If that makes sense, then there we go. It's pacing and balancing. You're not only making a beautiful game, you want to make sure it's engrossed for the player. You want them to feel great about your character, the story, what's going on. But if they're just more engrossed with the mechanics than the story and mechanics and everything else in between, that may be a problem. I'll give another example. Far Cry 3. Story up to the end was just kind of sucky. The intro had a good start, and then it dragged itself down at the very beginning, all the way into the ground, rubbing its face on the dirt, and it wasn't until the very end I actually liked it. It wasn't until the very end, the ending I gave to the game is what actually made me really like the game. But at the same time, I mostly just like the mechanics, the exploration, the vast world of it, the upgrading system when you skin animals to get more pouches for money or weapons or everything. I like that more than the actual freaking game they try to give us. I feel bad about that because I don't want to feel that way. Like Deus Ex Human Revolution, I love every mechanic, I love every story point it gives, even though the animations are very dull and basic. The gameplay is very fluent. I wanted to play through the game again, even after I just got every freaking achievement. I know every story point, I know all the characters, I know Adam Jensen, Megan Ross, I know all of this, or Reed, sorry. I know everything about that game that I literally will have no point to play through the game. I still want to play through the game because it is that immersive. And that's what's more important, is immersing the player into the world of the game. It does not have to be ultra realistic. It does not have to be ultra not realistic. As long as the mechanics that are in place with what the setting is trying to be, regardless if it's modern, futuristic, or sci-fi, whatever the case is, as long as the game is engrossing, it has a really good story, character development, gameplay, pacing, and flow, that is what is more important than anything else. Now, do I want to see more games like Doom and Quake return? If they're done correctly, yes, I kind of do. Because I want to see a refresh of first-person shooters, because I feel like we're on a downslide. Because Call of Duty and Battlefield are starting to kill that genre, where it's causing a lot of people that I like to talk to will only play RTSs or racing games because they feel first-person shooters are dull. And I understand that. But I think that the Doom-style FPSs and the Halo-style and Call of Duty stuff can mesh together to make a really good game if the mechanics flow between each other. If that makes any sense to end it off on, thank you. And if you listen to this entire recording, thank you. Anyways, I'll be done. You guys have a great day, and take care. And thank you for listening, for anyone who did. And hope that made any sense to you, Carnival. And I wish you luck on the game, and I hope I can give you money for it, because it looks awesome. Anyways, take care, everyone.